Something huge just dropped, and if you care even a little about season 6, then this moment is going to hit you hard. We finally have our first full scene of Jesus in the new season, and it's far more intense, layered, and revealing than I expected. This isn't just another preview, it's the moment that sets the entire direction of the season. And the deeper you look, the more shocking it becomes. Before we get into the scene itself, I want to walk you through everything happening around it, because the context is what makes this moment explosive. This scene opens the door to the darkest and most dramatic stretch of Jesus' ministry. What you're about to hear is a breakdown not just of what happens, but why it matters, and how the biblical groundwork intensifies everything. Let's start right at the foundation. This scene is rooted in John chapter 18, the moment after Jesus has already been betrayed, arrested, and dragged into Jerusalem. Judas' betrayal is behind us. The disciples have scattered, and Jesus is now being brought before the most powerful religious figures of the time. But here's the twist: this is the very first time we actually see Annas appear. He's been referenced, hinted at, and discussed, but never shown. And if you know a bit about biblical history, you know Annas wasn't just an ordinary figure. He wasn't simply another voice in the council. Annas was the true political powerhouse behind everything. He was the father-in-law of Caiaphas, the high priest, but that title barely scratches the surface. Annas had been high priest before, and 5 of his sons eventually held the same office. He was respected, feared, and treated almost like royalty among the leadership. If there was a string to pull, Annas was the one pulling it. So even though Caiaphas is the high priest on paper, Annas is the real architect here, the one who truly shapes what happens next. And that makes Jesus' confrontation with him much more dramatic. The scene begins with Jesus standing in front of Annas after being dragged in during the middle of the night. Annas opens with a cold, controlled line. It's the middle of the night after a long Seder. Keep your answers concise. What is the substance and purpose of your teaching? Right away, Annas shows his impatience, almost like he's dismissing Jesus before the questioning even begins. And Jesus responds in the calmest, most grounded way possible, but you can feel the tension underneath. He says, "I've spoken openly to the world. I've always taught in synagogues and in the temple where the religious leaders gather." It's clear he's frustrated. He has answered these questions countless times. His teaching has never been hidden. Everything has been public. And Jesus makes that point effortlessly. But Annas isn't satisfied. He fires back, calling it not an answer, even though it clearly is one. That's the moment the whole power dynamic becomes obvious. Annas doesn't want clarity. He wants control. And then the tension sharpens. Annas' son suddenly steps in with a sharp question. "Do you know who you're talking to?" This isn't just a question, it's a warning. Annas' son sees Jesus' confidence as disrespect. This is where you feel the family dynamics come into play. It's not just politics, it's personal. From here, the back and forth grows heavier. Annas accuses Jesus of lying, and Jesus replies simply, "I haven't lied." The simplicity of that line carries so much weight. Annas then tries a different angle, asking whether his teachings could be interpreted as calls to violence. Jesus doesn't defend himself with emotion. He says, "Ask those who have heard me." He pushes the responsibility back where it belongs. Annas hates this. You can practically feel his irritation boiling. He asks if Jesus would obey a ban from teaching publicly. Jesus says he has already given his answer to that. Annas wants control. Jesus refuses to meet him on that level. And then we reach the turning point. The tension rises as Caiaphas watches silently from behind Annas. That detail matters. The scene frames Caiaphas almost like the final stop in the chain, even though the events take place in his own home. Annas sits in the center like a king, while Caiaphas leans in from the background. That contrast sends a message. Annas is the one with the real authority. The conversation continues, and Annas becomes more irritated with each calm response from Jesus. Then the moment arrives that changes everything. Annas' son rushes forward and strikes Jesus across the face hard. The slap is more than just violence. It's the first physical blow Jesus endures this season, a signal that everything from here will escalate. The room freezes. Even Jesus reacts physically, pulling back, steadying himself, and then lifting his head again. It's subtle, But the meaning is powerful. He then does something even more shocking. He turns his other cheek, not in weakness, not in fear, in strength. His posture almost says, "You expected me to fight back. I won't, but I also won't fear you." This stuns Anna's son. You see an instant of confusion because Jesus refuses to react the way his attacker expects. Turning the other cheek here isn't passive. It's confrontational in its own peaceful way. It demands respect, forcing Anna's son to face his own aggression. After this, Annas returns to questioning Jesus using a list written on a scroll. He asks if Jesus ate with tax collectors. Jesus replies simply, "Yes." Then Annas asks if Jesus has eaten with an impure woman. Jesus answers with, "I have been observed." The meaning is clear. He does not consider these women impure. That subtle shift changes the tone completely. Annas continues pressing. He accuses Jesus of breaking the Sabbath. Jesus answers calmly. He is confident in everything he has done. Then comes another intense moment. Annas asks if Jesus counts as zealot among his followers. Jesus responds, "Some very zealous people, yes." But then clarifies, "None of my followers belong to the fourth philosophy. They belong to me." That line is huge. Jesus is saying his followers aren't defined by rebellion, politics, or groups. They're defined by him alone. Annas keeps going, asking whether Jesus associates with a Gentile woman of African descent, whether he eats with her, whether he uses the same vessel she drinks from. Jesus answers honestly and with complete indifference to their judgment. "I haven't thought about it." That answer alone challenges centuries of cultural boundaries. Then Annas asks the question sitting beneath all of this. "Do you intend to bring our people to ruin by leading a revolution to overthrow Rome?" Jesus' answer is brilliant. "There's no shortage of record keeping as to my words and teachings. In other words, look at the evidence." At this point, Annas steps aside to speak privately with Caiaphas. He's confused, frustrated, and almost unsettled. He admits he can't figure Jesus out. Why isn't he defending himself? He asks. Caiaphas replies simply, he doesn't see the need. They discussed a prophecy that one man will die for the people, and they realize something important. The prophecy doesn't say who will carry out the death. That realization shifts their strategy completely. They decide Rome must be the one to execute Jesus, and they only need a reason to hand him over. And that's how the scene ends, with Annas concluding, "We just need to find a reason to hand him over." It's a chilling line because we know exactly where it leads. This scene accomplishes so much. It introduces Annas as the true force behind the scenes, highlights Caiaphas' political conflict, and presents Jesus with unwavering calm and authority. The slab becomes a symbol of what's coming: humiliation, suffering, and the burden he willingly carries. Season 6 is heading straight toward the most emotional and painful chapter of the story, and this moment prepares us for it. The intensity, the tension, the political maneuvering, it all builds towards something enormous. Now that you've heard the breakdown, the question is simple. Where do you think the rest of the season is headed? Because based on this confrontation alone, the journey is about to get very, very intense.